They said the Sherman was a coffin on tracks, outgunned, out-armored, outmatched. But when the dust settled across Europe, it was German steel that burned, because the Americans had something the Wehrmacht never saw coming. Something invisible. February morning, Tunisia. 1943. The sun hasn't cleared the ridgeline yet. Just that pale blue light that turns everything cold and unreal. A German tank commander stands in his cupola, scanning through dust that hasn't settled from the night's artillery. And then he sees them, 5 American Shermans, separated by broken ground, by gullies and rock formations. No line of sight between them, but they're moving like fingers on the same hand, converging, adjusting, covering angles that shouldn't be possible without seeing each other. No signal flags snapping in the wind, no dispatch riders kicking up dust between the vehicles, no flares arcing overhead, just coordination. Perfect. Instant. Impossible. The German commander reaches for his radio, one of the few in his company that can actually transmit. Static crashes through his headset. He shouts into the microphone, trying to warn his platoon leader 300 meters away. But all he gets back is white noise and the crackle of electrical interference. The Shermans keep coming, and somehow, impossibly, they know exactly where each other are. North Africa, 1943. The proving ground where American armor learned to fight, and where a quiet revolution was already unfolding. Not in the thickness of steel plate, not in the caliber of cannons, but in the invisible realm of radio waves, where America had leaped a generation ahead, and the Germans were still fighting blind. 8,000 miles from Detroit's assembly lines, from Chicago's engineering labs, from the factories that built radios for Chevrolets and living rooms, the most decisive weapon of World War II was revealing itself, and the Germans had no idea it even existed. Rewind 18 months. July 22nd, 1941, Washington, D.C., a conference room in the War Department. Charts and specifications covering every surface. The United States Army makes a decision that will echo across battlefields from Tunisia to the Rhine. They standardize 3 radio models for every medium tank America will build: SCR-508, SCR-528, SCR-538, letters and numbers that mean nothing to civilians, but to the engineers at Galvin Manufacturing, soon to be known worldwide as Motorola. These designations represent the cutting edge of electromagnetic warfare. Daniel E. Noble sits in a Chicago lab, staring at circuit diagrams that spiral across his desk like modern art. He's trying to solve a problem that seems impossible. How do you make a radio work inside a moving tank? The vibration alone would shake vacuum tubes to pieces. The electrical noise from the engine, the ignition system, the track motors. It all becomes static that drowns out every word. And that's before you add artillery shells exploding close enough to rattle your teeth. Noble's solution is elegant. Revolutionary frequency modulation FM radio. The same technology that would later bring crystal-clear music into American homes. But first, it would bring crystal-clear death to German armor. Henryk Magnuski, the RF engineer who makes Noble's vision real, understands something fundamental. Information is ammunition. A tank that knows where the enemy is a tank that lives. A tank that can call for help, coordinate with its platoon, warn its friends. That tank becomes something more than just 30 tons of steel. It becomes part of a network. History's first battlefield network. The device they build weighs 181 pounds, a metal case packed with 2,548 individual components. capacitors and resistors and crystal oscillators, all built to tolerances that would make a watchmaker weep. The BC-604 transmitter generates 25 watts of power. That's 2.5 times the output of Germany's best tank radio, the Fuji-5. But raw power isn't the real advantage. The magic is in how it transmits. Edwin Armstrong's frequency modulation technology, licensed to the U.S. military in 1940, does something German radios simply cannot. It eliminates static. While German amplitude modulation systems pick up every electrical discharge as crackling noise, while every spark plug firing becomes a burst of white noise, while battlefield chaos turns their radios into useless hissing, the American FM system delivers voices, clear, calm, human, even through artillery barrages. The BC-603 dual receivers let a Sherman commander do something no German could dream of: monitor 2 frequencies simultaneously. Listen to your platoon on one channel. Listen to company command on another. Orders flowing down. Situation reports flowing up, all in real time, all perfectly clear, all while moving at 30 miles per hour across terrain that would shake a German radio off frequency entirely. The crystal-controlled. Frequency stability is the kind of detail that wins wars. American tankers preset 10 channels before battle. Touch a switch, and you're talking to a different unit. Instant. Reliable. German radios use variable capacitors for tuning. Delicate adjustment dials that drift with every bump, every temperature change, every hour of operation. German tank commanders spend half their time trying to find the right frequency again. American commanders spend that time killing German tanks. November 8, 1942, Operation Torch. The first major American armor operation in the European theater. Landing craft ramps drop on Moroccan beaches. Sherman tanks roll onto North African sand for the first time. And every single one, every single tank, carries an SCR-508 radio suite. 100% deployment. Every tank a radio node. Every crew connected. Across the Mediterranean, Rommel's Africa Corps, the most experienced armored force Germany possesses, operates under limitations that would seem unthinkable to American tankers. A standard German tank platoon. 5 vehicles. Maybe one has a full Fuji-5 transceiver that can transmit and receive. Maybe 2, if they're lucky. The rest? Fuji-2 receivers only. They can hear orders. That's it. They can't respond, can't report what they see, can't call for help when a Sherman appears on their flank. They just listen and obey and die alone when things go wrong. The German system works through rigid hierarchy. The platoon leader transmits orders. Subordinate tanks acknowledge through action, by moving, by firing, by following. It's a system that demands iron discipline, and it has a catastrophic weakness. Kill the command tank, easily identified by its multiple antennas, and the entire platoon goes deaf and mute. American forces will exploit this weakness again, and again, and again. February 14, 1943, Kasserine Pass. The first major battle between American and German armor in World War II. Tactically, it's a German. February 14, 1943, Kasserine Pass. The first major battle between American and German armor in World War II. Victory. Rommel's veterans maul the inexperienced Americans, sending them reeling back through the mountain passes. But even in defeat, American capabilities are on display. Capabilities that make German intelligence officers scribble frantic notes in their field reports. The U.S. 1st Armored Division is scattered across 50 miles of desert and mountain. units separated, formations broken, the kind of chaos that should lead to total collapse. But they don't collapse. Scattered tank platoons that have never met before, coordinate attacks, warn each other of threats they can't see, call for artillery support that arrives exactly where it's needed. All through voices that sound like they're talking from the next room. German signals intelligence units intercept the American transmissions, and they can't believe what they're hearing. The clarity, the range, the coordination. The 10th Panzer Division's intelligence section files a report that Berlin will largely ignore. American units maintain clear communication at ranges where our equipment produces only static. More concerning, every American tank appears capable of full transmission capabilities. This represents a fundamental difference in tactical doctrine and technical capability. They don't know the half of it. The German FUG-5 operates on amplitude modulation, 27.0 to 33.3 megahertz. 10 watts of transmission power, struggling to reach 2 or 3 kilometers in perfect conditions. But conditions are never perfect. Moving vehicles? The range drops to hundreds of meters. Engine running? Static tracks churning? More static. Every electrical motor in the tank generates interference that the amplitude modulation system can't filter out. It's like trying to have a conversation while someone runs a chainsaw next to your head. And then there's the bigger problem. The one German tank crews don't talk about because it's too demoralizing. Most of them don't have radios at all. Production can't keep up. Germany is building tanks faster than it can build the electronics to put inside them. So radios go to command vehicles first, to assault guns, to units with political connections. Regular Panzer companies make do with visual signals. Flags, hand, gestures, shouting. In 1943 in mechanized warfare, against an enemy where every single tank is a communications hub. September 1943, Italy. The mountains should equalize things. Terrain so broken that radios shouldn't matter. Nobody can see far enough for coordination anyway. Instead, the terrain makes American superiority even more obvious. Frequency modulation handles the multipath interference of mountain valleys, radio waves bouncing off rock faces, arriving at different times, creating echo effects that turn AM signals into gibberish.fm, cuts through it like it's not even there. American tank platoons, separated by ridgelines, coordinate attacks with precision that should require visual contact. They're talking to each other. Through solid rock, German tankers, separated by the same ridgelines, might as well be on different planets. Tudiitidohon, advance toward Monte Cassino, becomes a masterclass in radio coordination. Sherman, tanks calling in naval gunfire from ships they can't see. Coordinating, with infantry units using frequencies that shouldn't be compatible. But American ingenuity finds ways to bridge the gaps, moving through terrain that German doctrine says should fragment armored formations. But American formations don't fragment. They stay connected. They stay coordinated. They stay alive. June 6, 1944, Normandy, the Atlantic Wall, the largest amphibious invasion in human history. Sherman, tanks rolling off landing craft into waist-deep water. And even there, even in the surf, they're talking to naval fire. Support, calling in salvos from battleships 10 miles, offshore. Coordination that German technology cannot achieve under any circumstances. But the hedgerows reveal a problem. The bocage, ancient farming country where every field is surrounded by earth berms thick with roots and brush. Natural fortifications that turn every 100 yards into a separate battle. Tank radios work perfectly. Infantry radios work perfectly. But they can't talk to each other. The SCR-300 infantry radio operates at 40 to 48 megahertz. Tank radios 20 to 27.9 20 different frequencies, incompatible systems, so American tanks push through hedgerows, while friendly infantry 30 meters away watches German soldiers with Panzerfausts creep close, and there's no way to warn them. The radios that connect every American tank to every other tank can't reach the infantry fighting beside them. Men die in that communication gap for about 3 weeks because American sergeants don't wait for the Pentagon to solve problems. They solve problems themselves. Somebody gets the idea to mount EE-8 field telephones, the handheld phones infantry use with wire, in ammunition, boxes welded to the outside of tanks, wire them directly into the tank's internal communication system. Now infantry can run up, grab the phone, and talk directly to the crew inside. Panzerfaust team in the hedgerow, 10 o'clock. Roger, traversing left. Problem solved. By July, by Operation Cobra, though modification is standard and tank infantry coordination reaches levels the Germans have never seen. July 25, 1944, Operation Cobra. The breakout from Normandy. Major General Edward Brooks commands the 2nd Armored Division, over 200 Sherman tanks under his direct control, and he can talk to every single one of them across the line. Panzer Lehr Division, once Germany's premier armored force, the teaching unit for panzer tactics, tries to coordinate a defense. Most of their tanks don't have radios anymore. Production couldn't keep up. Replacements arrived without electronics. Field repairs consumed what few spare parts existed. They're fighting with flags and hand signals in terrain where visibility tops out at 100 meters against an enemy that can coordinate across 10 miles. The Americans seem omniscient. A German assault, gunfires from concealment, hits a Sherman, and immediately takes return fire from 3 directions. Tanks that couldn't possibly see the muzzle flash somehow know exactly where the shot came from, because a Sherman 200 meters away saw it and told everyone else. In under 5 seconds, artillery strikes land with precision that defies explanation. How does American artillery know exactly where German armor is concentrated? Because every Sherman is a forward observer. Every tank commander can call in fire missions, and those missions arrive in 3 to 5 minutes. German fire missions, when communication works at all, take 15 to 30 minutes. By then, the target has moved or died. The irony burns like phosphorus. Germany invented this. Heinz Guderian, the architect of Blitzkrieg, the man who wrote the book on armored warfare, had insisted on radios in tanks since the 1920s. His doctrine, published in Achtung Panzer in 1937, explicitly stated that rapid armored advances require reliable communication. He built the system that conquered Poland and France, and now, in 1944, his own panzer forces are fighting without the tools his doctrine demands, because German industry can't produce enough radios. In 1943, Germany manufactures approximately 5,700 medium and heavy tanks, and fewer than 2,000 FUG-5 transceivers. The math is brutal. Most tanks go to war silent. America, meanwhile, is producing radios like they're going out of style. Motorola's Chicago factory runs 3 shifts, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 1942. 3,800 tank radio sets, 1943, 11,400, 1944, $24,000. Total wartime production, over 50,000 SCR-500 series radios, enough for every Sherman tank America builds. all 49,034 of them, plus spares. 100% deployment. Not one tank leaves a factory without a radio suite. Not one crew goes to war unable to communicate. It's the kind of industrial mobilization that wins wars before the first shot is fired. The tactical implications transform American armored doctrine. The combat command structure, flexible task forces organized for specific missions, only works because of reliable communications. An American colonel can grab a company of Shermans from one battalion, a platoon of tank destroyers from another, a battery of artillery, some engineers, and create a custom battle group in an hour, and they'll all be able to coordinate. Different units, different commanders, different frequencies preset but compatible. They plug into the network and they work. German forces can't do this. Their rigid organizational structures aren't just doctrine. They're necessitated by limited communications. You can only coordinate with units you've trained with, units whose radio frequencies you know, units that even have radios. Flexibility requires communication, and the Germans are running out of both. September 1944. Our Corps, the 4th Armored Division, faces multiple German Panzer brigades on paper. It's not even close. The Germans have Panther tanks, the best medium tank Germany ever built. Sloped armor, high-velocity 75mm gun, superior to the Sherman in every measurable way. Except one. The Panthers can't talk to each other. Every Sherman can. Over 3 weeks of running battles, the 4th Armored destroys 281 German armored vehicles. They lose 41 Schurensic. 7-1 kill ratio against technically superior tanks. The Sherman's 75mm gun shouldn't be able to do this, but information is better than armor. Knowing where the enemy is better than having thicker steel. Being able to coordinate, to mass fires, to call in support, that's better than having a longer range cannon. Every Sherman reports enemy positions. Instantly, tank destroyers receive. Targeting information from tanks they can't see. Artillery observers riding in. Sherman command variants call in devastating barrages within minutes. The Germans are fighting individual battles. The Americans are fighting as a network. And the network is winning. German intelligence never grasps this. They see the results. They see the coordination. They see American armor operating with precision that shouldn't be possible, and they attribute it to training. A captured intelligence assessment from September 1944 reads, American tank units demonstrate good radio discipline and coordination. This appears to result from extensive training and rigid communication procedures. They're looking right at the answer and missing it completely. They think it's about training, about discipline, about better procedures. They don't understand that every Sherman has technology, German command. Tanks can't match, so German tactics never adapt. They keep targeting supposed command tanks based on antenna configurations. They don't realize that killing an American platoon leader just means someone else takes over, without missing a beat. Because every tank can assume command functions, they keep planning. Ambushes that assume American tanks will lose. Coordination when separated. They don't understand that radio contact maintains unit cohesion across distances where visual contact is impossible. They keep fighting the war they prepared for, while Americans fight the war they invented. March 1945. The poor Rhine River, the last natural barrier protecting Germany's heartland, the 9th Armored Division, probing forward, looking for crossing sites, stumbles onto the Ludendorff Bridge at Remagen and finds it intact. Every other bridge for 100 miles has been blown, but this one, through luck, through confusion, through German failures still stands. The platoon commander doesn't hesitate. He radios back. "Bridge intact. Can we take it?" That message reaches his company. Commander in seconds. Battalion commander in under a minute. Division commander in 2 minutes. 1st Army Headquarters, miles away, in less than 5 minutes. Center. The time German High Command realizes what's happened, an entire American armored division is shifting to exploit the breakthrough. Radio coordination at the strategic level. The Germans, dependent on telephone lines that American aircraft have systematically destroyed, can't respond with comparable speed. Their orders move by motorcycle courier, by staff car racing between headquarters, by commanders trying to find working phone lines. Hours pass, then a day, then 2 days. By the time German counterattacks arrive, the Americans have an impenetrable defense. Tank platoons from different battalions integrate seamlessly. Coordinates fires through radio networks. German counterattacks, poorly coordinated, arriving piecemeal, are destroyed before they can develop momentum. The bridge itself will collapse under damage, but by then, the Americans have engineering bridges spanning the Rhine in 6 locations, and the radio network that made it possible is already racing toward Berlin. April 1945, the Ruhr. Pocket, 325,000 German troops encircled, the largest pocket of the entire war. Inside the pocket, German communications collapse entirely. American fighter bombers, guided by radio-equipped forward air controllers, systematically destroy every communication node. They can find out Wehrmacht units lose contact with higher headquarters, with adjacent units, with reality itself. Field Marshal Walter Model's final messages before his communications fail entirely. No contact with adjacent units. No communication with higher headquarters. Fighting continues, but coordination impossible. The pocket doesn't break out, doesn't fight through, doesn't even retreat coherently. It just dissolves. Units surrender separately, unaware that neighboring units are still fighting, because they can't talk to each other. While outside the pocket, American armored columns from 1st and 9th Armies coordinate a complex double envelopment entirely through radio communications. 2 separate army groups, hundreds of miles of front, converging on a single objective. And every unit knows exactly where every other unit is. The electromagnetic spectrum has become American territory. The psychological impact is profound. American tank crews fight with the knowledge that they're never alone, even when physically isolated, when terrain separates them, when smoke obscures everything, when chaos reigns, they remain connected. A voice in the headset, a friend on the other end, someone who knows where you are and will come if you call. German tank crews experience the opposite. Profound isolation. They fight individual battles within larger engagements, unable to communicate, unable to coordinate, unable even to call for help. Otto Carius, one of Germany's most successful tank commanders, a man who would destroy over 150 enemy tanks, wrote in his memoir, Tigers in the Mud, about the constant challenges of limited communications. Even the best crews, in the best tanks, hamstrung by an inability to coordinate, fighting alone in the most social of all combat environments. After Germany's surrender, American technical intelligence teams fan out across the rubble, evaluating equipment, interviewing prisoners, trying to understand how the most technically advanced nation in Europe fell so far behind in something so critical. U.S. Army Technical Intelligence Report number 176 concludes, German tank communications equipment was approximately 5 years behind American systems. The absence of frequency modulation, limited radio distribution, and poor electrical suppression created critical vulnerabilities that German forces never overcame. 5 years, an entire generation of technology. In a war that lasted 6 years, that gap proved insurmountable. Soviet evaluators reached the same conclusion. Given access to captured German equipment as part of post-war intelligence sharing, Soviet engineers study the WWII and choose to copy American radio designs instead. The Red Army had suffered even worse communication poverty than the Germans. The T-34, the most produced Allied tank of the war, typically entered combat without any radio at all. Soviet doctrine relied on flag signals and pre-battle planning. It was catastrophic against German forces in 1941. Lend-Lease provided some relief. American radios, including SCR-508 sets, equipped Soviet command tanks. But even by war's end, only about 25% of Soviet tanks carried radios. The comparison highlights American achievement. While the Soviet Union struggled to equip 1/4 of their tanks with any radios, America achieved 100% deployment of sophisticated FM systems. In over 49,000 tanks, the statistics tell the story. American radio production, SCR-508, 528, 538. Family radios, 50,000+ units. Sherman tanks produced, 49,234 radio deployment rate, 100% transmission power, 25 watts frequency stability, crystal controlled, +0, 0.11% range while moving, 7 miles, range stationary, 10 to 15 miles, German radio. Production, WWII transceivers, approximately 6,000 units. Medium-heavy tanks produced, approximately 12,000 full transceiver deployment rate, approximately 20% transmission power, 10 watts frequency stability, variable, +1% range while moving, 0, 5 to 1 mile range stationary, 2 to 3 miles combat. Effectiveness, average time for American fire mission, 3 to 5 minutes average time for German fire mission, 15 to 30 minutes American tanks achieving coordination, 100% German tanks with full communication, 20% the numbers don't lie. Information dominance outweighed platform superiority. The legacy extends forward through time. Modern main battle tanks carry communication suites that trace their lineage directly to the SCR-508, digital rather than analog, encrypted rather than clear voice, integrated with computers and data links, but fundamentally based on the same principle: universal deployment and reliable coordination. The German Bundeswehr, rebuilt in the 1950s, prioritized communications based on World War II lessons. Every Leopard tank manufactured carries comprehensive radio systems. A Bundeswehr training manual explicitly states, "The defeat of superior German tanks by inferior American vehicles with superior radios teaches that information dominance outweighs platform superiority." They learned the lesson 60 years too late. The Persian Gulf. Desert Storm. Coalition forces with superior communications destroy Iraqi forces equipped with individually superior Soviet-designed tanks. But inferior radios. The same lesson. Again. Iraq. American forces demonstrate that network-centric warfare defeats platform-centric warfare. The same lesson. Again, the electromagnetic revolution that began in a Chicago laboratory in 1941 continues to shape modern warfare. February 1943, Tunisia. That German tank commander standing in his cupola, watching 5 Sherman tanks coordinate attacks that should be impossible. He didn't know he was witnessing a revolution, didn't know that every Sherman on that battlefield was connected in ways his doctrine said couldn't exist, didn't know that German forces were fighting partially blind against an enemy that could see everything. He just knew that something was wrong, that American tanks moved with coordination that defied explanation, that they appeared where they shouldn't be, that they knew things they shouldn't know, that they were winning battles they should lose. The radio in his tank crackled with static. While across the battlefield, American crews chatted in crystal clarity, planning, coordinating, winning, with 181 pounds of electronics that proved more powerful than all the armor in the world. The story of American tank radio superiority isn't about better tanks. It's about building a system where adequate tanks become extraordinary through connection, where information becomes ammunition, where coordination becomes armor, where every crew knows they're not fighting alone. The SCR-508 transformed the M4 Sherman from a decent medium tank into a component of a weapon system that included every other American tank on the battlefield. This transformation proved more decisive than any improvement in armor or firepower could have achieved. Every Sherman carried victory in its radio bay, not just in its 75mm gun, not just in its sloped frontal armor, but in the invisible waves that connected each crew to every other crew, creating collective intelligence that no individual German tank, regardless of superiority in armor or firepower, could match. German forces discovered this through bitter experience. At Kasserine Pass, through Italy's mountains, across France's hedgerows. In Germany's final battles, American tanks demonstrated coordination that German doctrine said was impossible, and the Wehrmacht never developed an effective counter, because they never fully understood the technological gap. Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel's reported comment at Germany's surrender, whether accurately quoted or apocryphal, captured a fundamental truth. We knew how to build better tanks, but you knew how to make them work together. America had built not just 49,234 Sherman tanks, but 49,234 nodes in the world's first armored battlefield network. The revolution in military affairs that historians identify with modern network-centric warfare actually began in 1942 when the first Sherman with an SCR-508 entered combat. From that moment, warfare changed forever. The side with superior communications would defeat the side with superior weapons. The network would defeat the platform. The connected would overcome the isolated. This transformation occurred largely invisible to German forces. They saw American tactical superiority, but they didn't recognize its technological foundation until far too late. By the time German commanders understood that every Sherman tank possessed communication capabilities that most German tanks lacked, the war was effectively decided. Germany's failure to recognize and adapt to American communication superiority stands as one of World War II's great intelligence failures. Despite countless battlefield encounters demonstrating American coordination advantages, despite reports from the front describing impossible American capabilities, despite clear evidence that something fundamental had changed, German leadership never prioritized solving their critical communication weakness. They continued building superior tanks that fought as isolated individuals, while American forces built adequate tanks that fought as coordinated teams. In the end, the electromagnetic waves carried by SCR-508 radios proved more powerful than armor-piercing rounds fired by German 88mm guns. The ability to coordinate, to share information instantly, to fight as a unified force rather than as individual vehicles, this invisible advantage determined victory more surely than any visible superiority in armor or armament. The Sherman tank's radio superiority changed warfare forever, establishing the principle that in modern combat, connection equals survival, and isolation equals defeat. German troops discovered this reality on battlefields across 3 continents. Learning too late, that the Americans possessed not just numerical superiority, but technological superiority in the dimension that mattered most: the ability to fight as one. The guns fell silent in May 1945, but the lessons echo still in every modern tank, in every radio net, in every coordinated strike. The voice in the headset that says, "You're not alone." That promise, born in Chicago, proven in Tunisia, validated across Europe, remains the foundation of armored warfare. Connection is survival. The network is the weapon. And the side that understands this first writes the history